22 лютого в соборі святих Володимира і Ольги в Чикаго відбулася панахида за душі героїв Небесної Сотні та інших героїв, що загинули у боротьбі за волю України.
We have gathered together as one community united to pay our respects and to honor
Після
the fallen
панахиди
heroes.
громадські організації Чикаго провели мітинг перед собором на підтримку боротьби українського народу з російським агресором та тероризмом в Україні. Молитву про допомогу під час нападу ворогів прочитав архімандрит Іван Крутець.
На допомогу нам і подай воїнству нашому з ім'ям Твоїм перемогти. Зруйнуй неправедні наміри тих, хто ідуть на нас війною.
Now we would ask Dr. Alex Truchuk, President of the Ukrainian Congress Committee, Illinois Division, to say a few words.
Олесь Стрійчук, голова Іллінойського відділу Українського конгресового комітету, в своїй промові згадав героїв Небесної Сотні і осудив російську агресію в Україні.
Of the Heavenly 100 proved to be the start of blatant Russian aggression of Ukraine and the end of a peaceful Maidan. Today we pay tribute to the heroes of the Heavenly 100 with the solemn promise that we will continue to fight for an independent, sovereign Ukraine. I have the distinct honor of presenting our next guest.
Наступним виступив конгресмен Дік Дурбін, представив його Павло Бандрівський, член управи Українського конгресового комітету відділу Ілліной.
He has traveled to Ukraine several times to get a personal view of the situation. 2 weeks ago, he and several Senate colleagues issued a strong letter to Secretary of State John Kerry, calling for U.S. support for Ukraine. The Ukrainian American community asked Senator Durbin to mobilize the U.S. Senate to formally champion Ukrainian issues in Congress, and he responded by forming the bipartisan Senate Ukraine Caucus. He agreed to serve as co-chairman of the caucus, and he has called upon fellow senators to join as well. 2 days ago, Senator Durbin gathered his Senate colleagues to send an even stronger letter to Secretary Kerry, citing the Minsk II violations by the Russian-backed terrorists in Debaltseve, and calling for increased sanctions against Russia and for the U.S. to provide military weapons to Ukraine. Senator Durbin is not fooled by Vladimir Putin's deceptions or fooled by his dishonesty. And Senator Durbin is not afraid to speak the truth. He has been working consistently to convince members of his own party to take the right course of action and has built a bipartisan alliance in the Senate to help Ukraine defend its sovereignty, territorial integrity, and democratic aspirations. We want to assure you, Senator Durbin, that the Ukrainian community will not give up because we cannot give up. Giving up on Ukraine will not only be a tragedy for Ukraine, but a tragedy for America. Therefore, as Americans, we must convince President Obama to give Ukraine the type of help needed to resist Russian aggression. Together with you, we can get this done. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the senior senator from Illinois and co-chair of the Senate Ukraine Caucus, Senator Dick Durbin.
Thank you for that kind introduction. It is an honor to be here today. 11 months ago, I journeyed to Kyiv with a group of senators, and we walked the Maidan. We stopped as they pointed out to us the bullet holes in the trees, or the sniper fire could be seen. They pointed to us where people had fallen, people who had only come to the Maidan to fight for freedom and to establish the right of Ukraine to guide its own future. Because of their courage in standing up for Ukraine, they gave their lives. 100. It is appropriate that we stand today in front of this great church, that we started this day with prayer of gratitude for the courage of the heavenly 100, who stepped up as others have throughout history to stand up for freedom and liberty, and who gave their lives. I was told that there was a beautiful service this morning, that it gathered the Catholic, the Orthodox, and many others to pray together for these heavenly 100. Prayer is important. Prayer is the right place to start. But we need more than prayer. We need to come together to stand behind the forces in Ukraine that are fighting the aggression of Vladimir Putin and the Russians today. We need to provide them with more than just prayer. We need to provide them with the weapons to defend their country against this aggression by Vladimir Putin. We need to put the sanctions, more sanctions, on Russia so that they can understand that this aggression will not stand. I look out here and I see flags from other nations, and they bring back memories. Over in the corner, that Lithuanian flag. You know how I feel about that. My mother was born in Lithuania, and for decades, the Lithuanian people were enslaved by the Soviet Union. We have so many of our friends and neighbors here in Chicago from Poland. The Polish people can tell the story too, can't they? The story of Soviet aggression, the denial of freedom, the closing of churches. That story has been repeated over and over and over again. Many years ago, when I was just a young man with no gray hair, I would go to the rallies we called the Captive Nations rallies. Some of you may remember them. And we all came together, the countries that had been victimized by the Soviet Union, the countries that dreamed of freedom. And we wondered as we walked away, could we live long enough to see the day when there would be freedom in these countries? That day came. The Baltics were free. Poland was free. The Warsaw Pact ended. Ukraine had its freedom, had its opportunity to decide its own future. But Putin wouldn't allow that to happen. And so he sent in these forces. He didn't even have the courage to leave them in their Russian uniforms. He sent them in disguise, and they took the Crimea. And now, Donetsk. And now, what is next? It was several weeks ago when our government was preparing to send defensive weapons to help Ukraine. And then, Germany, Angela Merkel, and France, President Hollande, came forward and said, let us negotiate a ceasefire with Putin. A ceasefire with Putin. How many ceasefires have we received and remembered when it comes to Russia and Putin? Yeah. We knew how this would end. We knew exactly how it would end. In Debaltseve and in other cities across Ukraine, people are still dying because of Putin's aggression. It is time for us to acknowledge the truth. And the truth is this. Ukraine is counting on the United States. Ukraine is counting on European Union. Ukraine is counting on freedom-loving nations across the world to stand by their side and support Ukraine. We must make certain that we put the pressure on Putin to stop with more sanctions, that we give Ukraine the weapons to fight, to defend their own territory, and to bring in international observers and peacekeepers who can tell us the truth of what is happening in Ukraine today. And so when I last visited with you, you asked me if I would go back to Washington and try to organize a Ukraine caucus in the United States Senate. It's the first, and we did it. We have Republicans and Democrats standing together for Ukraine. And I joined with my friend and Republican colleague, Senator John McCain, just 2 days ago. And we wrote a letter to our friend, Senator Kerry, now Secretary Kerry, telling him this was the time. The ceasefire has not worked. It is time for us to step up and defend Ukraine, to send them the weapons they need. And I promise you this. When I return to Washington tomorrow, I will continue to tell this story. I will remember you standing in the cold on this Chicago afternoon, standing in unity with the freedom fighters in Ukraine, standing for the liberty and freedom which we value so much. It is an honor to be here. It is an honor to carry on the tradition of freedom and to realize that each generation, every generation, has its own responsibility to preserve freedom and to be willing to fight for it. Slava Ukraine! Thank you.
Після численних виступів представників різних громадських організацій та гостей всі разом заспівали гімн України.